Hey everyone, and welcome to the deep dive. We're going to be doing a deep dive today on 8 signs of low self-esteem. We're using this awesome source, by the way, that breaks down like all this psychology stuff in plain English. Makes it actually understandable, which is really cool. And
I love this source.
Get ready for some serious aha moments, because you might be surprised to learn that some of these signs actually show up in like our physical habits too. So like even the way we're standing or sitting could be a clue.
Yeah, you'd be surprised.
Let's jump right in with sign number 1, constant self-doubt.
Yeah, so our source defines self-doubt as this like persistent feeling of uncertainty, and it can really impact how we make decisions.
Oh, I feel that big time. Like, think about all those times you almost like went for something, but then that little voice in your head just like pops up and is like, nope, not today.
Yeah.
Like maybe you were going to audition for a play or ask someone out on a date, but then self-doubt just like slams on the brakes. You start thinking, what if I totally mess up?
Right.
Or what if they like totally reject me?
It's true. It's like self-doubt creates this like cycle of regrets. We hold back because of low self-esteem, and then because we don't take any risks, we end up missing out on opportunities to prove ourselves wrong.
Oh, wow.
And build our confidence.
So it's not just about one missed opportunity. It's like this pattern that keeps happening.
Exactly.
And it can affect our careers, our relationships, even just like how we talk to people every day.
It touches everything.
Wow. Okay.
And that kind of brings us to the next sign, being overly apologetic.
This one kind of surprised me at first. I was like, wait, isn't saying sorry just like good manners?
Mm-hmm.
But then I started thinking about all the times I've apologized when it wasn't really necessary.
It's all about the difference between like a genuine apology and just constantly apologizing for everything. Like when it becomes your default mode, it might be a sign of something deeper going on. Psychologists say it could be rooted in a fear of like disapproval, or maybe a strong need to please everyone around you. It could even be a way of avoiding conflict by just taking the blame before anyone else can.
Ah, that makes sense. So like, let's say you're stuck in a work meeting and it runs way over time. You find yourself apologizing profusely, even though you didn't plan the meeting or control how long it went,
Right. And the thing is, you might not even realize you're doing it, but think about the message that ends.
Yeah.
By constantly apologizing. It's like we're diminishing our own voice and presence. It's like we're shrinking back instead of standing up for ourselves.
And it can totally affect how other people see us, too.
Absolutely.
If someone's always saying sorry, others might start to question their competence or take them less seriously. They might even try to take advantage of that person's tendency to always take the blame.
Exactly. It impacts our relationships in a big way. So here's a question for you, listener. Are your apologies actually necessary, or are you just saying sorry out of habit? A little self-reflection can go a long way.
That's a good point. All right, let's move on to sign number 3. Shifting blame to others. This one seems like the flip side of being overly apologetic. Instead of taking on too much responsibility, we just like deflect it entirely.
Yeah. And this usually comes from a place of deep insecurity and fear of criticism. Someone with low self-esteem might instinctively shift the blame to protect their fragile sense of self.
Like a defense mechanism.
Exactly.
So imagine you're working on a group project and it totally bombs. Instead of acknowledging your part in it, you immediately point fingers at your teammates.
Oh yeah, classic blame shifting. In the moment, it might feel easier to avoid accountability and the discomfort of admitting our mistakes.
Sure.
But here's the thing. While blaming others might offer temporary relief, it actually prevents us from learning and growing from our experiences.
So even though it can feel scary, taking responsibility is actually more empowering in the long run.
Absolutely. It helps us develop resilience and understand that mistakes don't define us. Mistakes are opportunities to learn and improve. Our source really emphasizes that owning up to our actions is a much more powerful path than trying to hide from them.
That's such a great reminder. We all mess up sometimes. It's how we handle those mess ups that really matters. Okay, this next sign is a bit of a curveball. Poor posture. I was so surprised to learn that our physical body language could actually be a sign of low self-esteem.
Yeah, it's fascinating how our body language often reflects how we feel about ourselves on a deeper level.
The source mentions things like slouching crossed arms, lack of eye contact. It's almost like our body is physically shrinking away from the world.
Exactly. And that kind of posture not only communicates self-doubt to others, it can also reinforce those feelings within us.
Oh, wow. So it's like a vicious cycle.
Yeah, if we're constantly hunched over, it's hard to feel confident and powerful, it's like our physical state is feeding back into our emotional state.
And there's another layer to this, right? The actual physical downsides of bad posture.
Oh, absolutely. Chronic slouching can lead to back pain, neck tension, headaches. It can really impact our overall well-being.
Oh, yeah, I can definitely relate to that.
And here's a cool finding from the source. Studies have shown that good posture can actually improve mood and confidence.
Really?
Yeah.
So even something as simple as sitting or standing up straight can have a ripple effect on how we feel about ourselves.
Small changes can lead to big shifts.
That's incredible. Okay, so what's the next sign?
Okay, sign number 5 is something I think we've all experienced at some point. Developing nervous habits.
Yeah.
Like biting our nails or fidgeting or twirling our hair. Those little things we do without even thinking when we're feeling anxious or stressed.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I'm a total pen clicker when I'm under pressure. It's like my hand has a mind of its own. But it's interesting to think about those habits as signs of low self-esteem. It seems kind of like a stretch at first.
Yeah, it might seem that way. But these nervous habits are often how we cope with underlying anxiety and discomfort. Our source explains that they can provide temporary relief, but they often come with downsides too.
Right. So it's like our body trying to release all that nervous energy, but then we end up with bitten nails or a sore head from twirling our hair.
Exactly. And some habits like skin picking can even cause actual physical damage. Not to mention, they can be super distracting or embarrassing, especially when you're around other people.
Yeah, true. And the source says these habits are often unconscious, so we might not even realize we're doing them until someone points it out, which makes them even harder to break.
That's true. It can be tough. But there is hope. Our source suggests trying to replace the habit with something more constructive. Like if you bite your nails, maybe keep a stress ball nearby to squeeze instead. Or if you fidget a lot, try some deep breathing exercises.
So it's about taking control and finding healthier ways to deal with stress and anxiety.
Exactly. And speaking of managing stress, let's move on to sign number 6, downplaying your achievements. Have you ever gotten a compliment and instantly brushed it off?
Oh yeah, all the time. I always say something like, oh, it was nothing, or I just got lucky. It's like I'm programmed to be self-deprecating.
It's a common reaction when self-esteem is low. But downplaying your accomplishments can actually make that negative self-image worse over time.
Yeah, it's like we're telling ourselves we don't deserve the recognition or praise. And that can really chip away at our confidence.
Exactly. It can make us less likely to go for new challenges or pursue our goals. Our source suggests a simple but powerful fix. Learn to accept compliments with a genuine thank you.
It sounds so basic, but I can see how that could make a big difference. It's about acknowledging your worth and letting yourself feel proud.
Right. It's about retraining our brains to embrace those positive affirmations instead of automatically deflecting them.
I like that. Okay, let's talk about sign number 7, negative self-image. This one feels a bit heavier. It's about those deep down feelings of not being good enough.
Yeah, this one goes beyond just having low self-esteem. It's about having this really negative view of ourselves that affects everything we do.
The source describes it as having these intrusive thoughts that are totally untrue, but they really damage our sense of self-worth.
It's tough. When we have a negative self-image, we get stuck on our flaws and compare ourselves to everyone else. It's like looking in a funhouse mirror. Everything's distorted.
And it's so easy to fall into that trap, especially with social media where everyone seems perfect.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
But it's important to remember that everyone has unique strengths and qualities. We need to focus on the positive and be kind to ourselves.
The source talks about working on our self-image. It sounds like a journey, but a worthwhile one.
It is, because when we see ourselves in a more positive light, we can appreciate our own value and treat ourselves with more kindness and understanding. And that leads us to our last sign for today, striving for perfectionism.
Perfectionism, the never-ending quest to get everything just right. I think we've all been there.
It's pretty common. But when it takes over, it can be a sign of deeper insecurities. Our source says perfectionism often comes from a fear of failing.
So instead of just learning and accepting that mistakes happen, we get paralyzed by this need to be perfect. We might put off starting projects, overthink every little decision, and spend hours revising and tweaking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like we're trapped in this loop of self-doubt and fear, always trying to reach an impossible standard.
Yeah, it can be exhausting. So how do we escape this perfectionism trap?
Well, our source talks about learning to accept good enough. It's about letting go of those unrealistic standards and accepting that mistakes are just part of learning and growing.
It's like realizing that perfection is just this made-up idea, and that aiming for excellence is way healthier than being held back by the fear of messing up.
Exactly. And sometimes good enough is actually more than enough. It lets us move forward, take risks, and learn from our experiences without being frozen by that pressure to be flawless.
We've covered so much today exploring these 8 signs of low self-esteem. It's amazing how much we can learn just by paying attention to these little patterns in our thoughts, behaviors, and even our physical habits.
It's been a really interesting deep dive. And remember, listener, these signs are just a starting point. If any of them resonated with you, maybe take some time to think about those feelings and how you can build a more positive relationship with yourself.
Yeah, for sure. Out of all the signs we talked about today, which one stood out to you the most? Was there anything new you learned or something you want to explore more?
It's important to remember that everyone struggles with self-doubt sometimes. It's part of being human. But when those feelings start taking over and affecting our lives, that's when we need to pay attention. This deep dive isn't meant to be a diagnosis, but just a way to encourage you to think about your self-esteem and take steps to improve it.
And remember, there are lots of resources available if you need help. Talking to a therapist or counselor can provide personalized guidance and support.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of those small everyday actions. Like we talked about, even just improving your posture or accepting a compliment can start to change your mindset over time.
It's those small wins that add up and lead to real change. And remember, you're not alone in this. There are people who care about you and want to see you thrive.
So listener, as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with a sense of hope and empowerment. Building self-esteem is a journey, and it's okay to ask for help. You deserve to feel good about yourself, and with the right tools and support, you can get there.
Keep learning, keep exploring, and keep believing in yourself.
Right.
That's it for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, keep diving.